What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Austin, and welcome to the Roundup. And joining me, as always, Mr. Tom Anderson. Tom, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Austin.
Did you get a new camera this week?
I did. So I have a new Razer laptop, and it's got the great new high-end camera. So
that's what I'm talking about.
I still probably could tweak the settings on it a bit, but
you guys enjoy Tom in 4K this week, my friends. All right, cool. So, man, it's been interesting out there, right? We've got Bitcoin breaking all-time high. Alts, man, tough on alts across the board. It's been tough on alts, but at the same time, something tends to happen in our community, which I know you've experienced because I've experienced it, is that, when things start running, now everything seems to be like it must happen right now. Right. Like I want all my questions answered right now. What's going on? And that's kind of the purpose of the Roundup, I suppose. But feet definitely get held to the fire when money moves. And so I'll ask you, what's been going on behind the curtain, Tom?
Yeah. So one of the things I was going to talk about today is the roadmap. And so we had a delay on that. I've kind of addressed it in Telegram, but I'll address it here. But actually, before we jump into that, you just said one other thing that I thought was that kind of picked a thought, that I think is important for people to understand. So historically, for us as a project, we've kind of had our runs that trail a little bit what else other people are doing. And what I think is happening is, people get into the more speculative, exciting stuff, like one of the big kind of recent things is memes, right? And nobody buys a meme thinking oh, this is going to be my long-term future, right? They just think oh, it's going to be going up short-term and I'm going to time it. I'm going to buy some now and sell some in the very near future for a higher price, right? But I think what happens with us is we're generally perceived as a longer-term project, something that's got more substance to it. We've generally taken the approach that, we make the steak before the sizzle, and most crypto projects do the sizzle and then never even come up with the steak. Right. And so that's, I think, part of where we trail on kind of this cyclical nature of the crypto space, where people tend to, in the crypto space, the rising tide rises all, lifts all boats. Right. But at a point where you've made some funds and you want to, diversify or whatever, then you start looking for the good projects. And so in 2021, we kind of had our bump up in interest, towards the end of the cycle. So I think, again, we're a little bit of a different project than others. But I'll also point out, kind of in that same breath, we're also, I think, keyed into where the crypto space is going rather than where it's kind of been more cyclical in the past. And so, the crypto space is going to be changing dramatically over the next couple of years because TradFi, traditional finance, is moving into it in a big way. And all of kind of the past rules and what's been happening, and even the way the cycle happens, and the way that, I think this cycle is going to be different. And a lot of people think that, but I think, for me, more driven by the way TradFi is coming in. So one thing I'll keep in mind, I just described that people should keep in mind when you're looking at us. We're not as much a project that you try to time, like other projects where it's just timing and you're going to just, get out. It's hard to time something like us because we're focused in on this bigger macro trend of TradFi moving into DeFi. But we're also something that then longer term has real legs, and the potential to kind of stand. So it's kind of interesting thinking about us as, the Bitcoin's been hitting all-time highs and, just kind of what's going on. I think we're a little bit different. Okay. So with those thoughts, I'll mention, then kind of jump into what you're saying then. What are we doing on the roadmap? So if you go back, a couple months, the team said, all right, let's, can we announce we're going to do a roadmap? Can we say we're going to get it out in June? And so I approved that, and I was kind of thinking, all right, that's straightforward. We'll get the roadmap in June. That amount of time is plenty of time, to get something out. And so I didn't have a hard time saying, all right, we're going to give a specific date. And the problem in tech in general is, not only do things take longer than you hope sometimes, and sometimes things even go faster, but a lot of times, the technical development takes a little bit longer. But then the other thing that happens is, especially with a platform like ours that's applicable in so many areas, you have opportunities that come up and kind of, drive. You have to roll with the punches when you're early stage and say like, oh, well, this particular opportunity can get us where we're going quicker. And I'm not talking about chasing, right? I'm not talking about taking the next shiny thing and always trying to chase what's shiny. I'm more saying within the big vision that you have, what's the best path to get there, right? And so you'll have places where a bigger partner comes up and you start talking to them. It's like, wow, that's a good opportunity to kind of drive some of the things that we're wanting to drive. So, but back a couple months ago, I kind of felt like, all right, whatever we're going to be putting in writing in the roadmap, we can get it done in that kind of time frame. And so I felt comfortable setting the time. But what ended up happening though is two things. One is we kind of looked at the cyclical nature again of the crypto space, and the reality is we've got 1 foot in Web3 and 1 foot kind of in TradFi, right? One foot in DeFi and 1 foot in TradFi. And so there were some kind of trends in the DeFi space that made us think, what if we took pieces of what we're doing and got them out earlier? And so that was kind of new over the last couple of months, and it's opportunity driven. And I'll go into a little bit more detail exactly what I'm referring to there. But I think overall we were kind of taking a more monolithic approach to a bigger product release and saying, what if we took pieces of that and had earlier product releases that we came out with sooner that just was better timing. Right. So I think that's one of the things that changed. And I didn't know it a couple months back. But it also is pretty exciting how it's come together and the way we're kind of getting some of these, earlier releases out. And I'm not quite ready to talk about them. I will be once we put the roadmap out. So this is a little bit just, a high level description of why the roadmap was delayed. So that was one of it. The other thing is, there's two things in general that happened since that couple months back when I agreed on the timing. So one is taking the monolithic kind of software and breaking down into smaller pieces and coming out with earlier pieces sooner. The second piece is a category of development that we'll describe when we actually do come out with the roadmap, but a category of development that I think people are going to be excited about, that I think can drive more kind of third party communities coming into what we're doing, and can drive user growth in a way. And then in itself, I think people are going to find exciting in the time frame we can come out with, and can come out with that in a quicker time frame as well. So those two pieces I would call strategic. They're things that we kind of took a step back and said, maybe we should, adjust our strategic plans a bit. And then that reflects in the roadmap. So, rather than forcing and rushing a roadmap on kind of the original timing, given those two strategic pieces were kind of falling into place differently than I originally thought, it means that we got to push the roadmap back a bit. But we're not pushing back a lot. I'm not talking like we're going to be months out and it's coming out then. I'm talking about in a relatively short time frame, weeks, not months. We'll be able to take those strategic pieces and reflect them in the roadmap. And I think people are going to be really happy with, kind of the things that we come out and describe in the new iteration of the roadmap.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. So all right, first thing to unpack, right? And this has a lot to do with DevvE, but it kind of leads into the next thing. DevvE being an all-in-all utility token, right? One of the, and admittedly, once the utility is on the market, it's going to have some of the greatest utility of any token out there. But at this particular moment, it really doesn't have that, right? We can't touch and feel that utility. And I think when some of that hits the market, and that really does lead into, kind of what you were just talking about, I think we're going to see some movement in that respect. And so as a community member, if I were a community member watching this, not a team member who's been on the phone calls, I would say, all right, that sounds good, but I don't really understand the shape and flavor of what you just talked about. and I get that. And so without letting the cat out of the bag, because we certainly are not going to, I want to mention that, I was a community member first, right? And the things that Tom has talked about are things that are going to put utility on the market for DevvE. They're products that are very integral to the exchange, but also ones that, like he said, could be sectioned off, and something the community has been asking for a long time that I think is going to have major, major, major impact. And so even though you guys don't know exactly what the shape and flavor is, just know I'm excited as hell about this. We've got some really, really good things on the horizon, and that's what he was just describing there. So even if you don't know the details, you will very soon when the roadmap comes out, and I think you guys are going to be very pleased with it.
Yeah, it's tempting, when we hop on these calls, it's tempting to try to tease it, and because we're excited about it, right? And so, but there's some of the things that we've been working on that adjusted the strategy, those two categories. We need to come out with them when we're ready to come out with them. So admittedly, like I'm a little bit even breaking my rule talking about things in a vague way on this call right now, but I'm doing that because we did miss the timing on the roadmap, and I approved the timing, and because I approved it, it's on me. But I again, it's for everybody's best interest that we pushed it back a little bit. And then when we come out with the roadmap, we're going to describe these kind of two categories, and again, people are going to like them. So I don't want to. Sometimes we've teased stuff before and it kind of pulls some of the punches. I want to just come out with them fresh, when we're ready, and we're getting close to being ready to kind of put them out. So.
100%. And one thing that I pulled out from what you said, and I know some people, at times in the chats have felt like we weren't aware of the crypto cycles that were going on, and really what I pulled out of what you said is, hey, we know a bull run is about to pop off here, and we're making moves to be able to capitalize on that and put our best foot forward, right? Is kind of the way I am looking at it. So awesome. Thank you for breaking that down. Anything else you wanted to touch on? I mean, that was a lot. But anything else you want to touch on? Anything going on in the back end with DevvE? Anything, exchange development wise?
Yeah. Well, so a couple other updates. I've been spending a lot of my personal time on the website, and we're working with an amazing group,
Yes.
doing the website. So I've seen, Telegram messages. Oh, we're not getting teasers on that like we were expecting, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of work going on it, and again, I'm spending my own personal time, working on it, making sure I'm pushing it forward. Well, part of what's happened is the web team that's working on it, they're really interested, invested in it themselves, and so I've been working with Sean, for example, and he's been saying well, I wasn't excited about this bit. I'm kind of personally moving forward, and I want to revamp some of this kind of stuff. And so when you have somebody who's as talented as he is, and they say I want to get it right, then that's what you do, right? And so we're not at a point where we can put out the teasers, but a lot of work's going into it. So that's one other thing that's going on. Another concept that's going on that kind of ties in with the opportunity that I'll just describe is I've been working with Will Stewart, having conversations with other companies. So, for example, I recently had a conversation with an investment bank that has done a lot of the public company deals where public companies are creating treasuries. And so, there's a lot of that going on right now, more than I realized when you start really digging into it. So there's a few that I had seen, like there's the kids token, for example, and then there's the big kind of infamous one is MicroStrategy, right? But MicroStrategy kind of defined and showed that concept, but lots of others have done that. So I mean, there's dozens, maybe even hundreds of companies that are creating treasuries, and I think that's part of the what's defining this cycle and how it's moving ahead, and where Bitcoin is hitting all-time highs, that kind of thing. And so when those types of things are happening, when actual public companies that are traditional finance companies start looking into getting treasuries, that's pretty indicative of the way the space is moving. And I think that creates opportunity for us. So at a broad level, what we're doing as a company, DevvEO and Forever and Dev Digital with the exchange, we're creating a bridge and a way to take DeFi innovation and combine it with TradFi security and safety and processes and regulation, right? Those kinds of things. And so seeing all these companies creating treasuries, I think creates opportunity for us, because all the companies that are traditional finance kind of gain into the space. They start to run into the shenanigans that happen that we've all been living with for years. But things like, you lose your private key, or there's theft, right? Bybit had, $1.5 billion stolen not very long ago, a month and a half ago, and like that's the kind of stuff that TradFi just won't get involved so long as those risks exist. And so that's a pretty big statement, right? They won't get involved as long as those risks exist. And we uniquely have solutions to those problems with our theft protection and our private key loss protections, right? And those are things that traditional finance needs. The other thing is with our devise system and the way that we can create yield off of pools of assets. So what we put into our liquidity caches, what we call them, we can partner with companies that have created treasuries and allow them to create a yield and not have the treasury just be sitting there, right? So that's part of where I think some of that opportunity comes. And then you have the Circle IPO was massive. They've done really well. And again, this is the kind of stuff that is very meaningful in a TradFi sense. So you have C-suite execs at all of these big TradFi financial institutions that see these things happen and they don't want to get left behind. And so there's a sense out there that I'm seeing that you have some leaders like BlackRock, with tokenized real world assets, and then you have Robinhood's been making a lot of waves on tokenized securities, and all these other big TradFi companies, hundreds of them, right? The Fortune, the global 2,000 companies out there, they don't want to get left behind, and so if they need to spend a couple years developing something, then they're getting left behind, or they could partner with DevvE and Forever and Dev Digital, and they can kind of get out there much more quickly. So I think that's a big category of opportunity for us. So again, the types of things that TradFi finds exciting, like the Circle IPO, you see that, but it doesn't create the waves in the crypto space that it does in the TradFi space. But I'm just making the point that TradFi space is having its own waves being created, and nobody wants to get left behind. And we've been building technology for years that kind of suits all of that. So then you look at, well, what can we do, to get out there more quickly and show people that we're in the game and that these products are real and exist and stuff. That's where we kind of took some of that monolithic approach and broke out pieces and just kind of reordered stuff. So things didn't really kind of fundamentally change. It's just in the big picture, it's just we saw opportunity to get things out quicker that more strategically aligns us with things that we're seeing. And so a lot of that has come from the conversations and the Zoom calls and everything I've been having with Will Stewart and leads he's been setting up. So that's part of also what's driven it.
Beautiful. I don't think anyone's going to complain about quicker releases for sure.
Yeah. Less risk on them, that type of thing. So
yeah, bingo. And I think once people start to see products on market that have come from the DevvE team, I think it's going to be a different day for everyone. Good deal, my friend. Anything you want to say before we close this out?
Yeah, so I'll just close with those concepts are pretty close to coming out. I'm excited to show them. So when we come out with the roadmap, we're going to be describing these kind of new 2 categories, and one of the categories will actually be able to show more stuff on it, and then the other category will be able to move ahead kind of more quickly. So stay tuned. There's some pretty exciting things coming up soon. So not long. One of these weekly roundups will have the roadmap out, and you and I can jump into it in more detail, and then we've also got the Q&A session as well. So I'll just mention that too. If anybody wants to have you and I go through questions, we'll have a big AMA, and we've already been collecting questions. So go to the Telegram group and you can see where we're collecting questions for that. But you and I are going to be doing that soon too. And I wanted to do that after the roadmap's out and after we've kind of described these 2 new concepts, and we can answer questions specifically around that too. So that's another concept that's coming up soon.
Well, and and you and I had talked about this. I guess we're gonna do that live on YouTube and possibly on X, which will be great. But one thing we can do with live is we could put out a giveaway. We could take questions live on the air. We can do a lot of fun stuff that we don't normally get to do with the recorded sessions. So looking forward to that, buddy.
Yep, totally.
Awesome. All right. Thank you once again, Tom. For everyone that's watching, my name's Austin. Oh, by the way, the sign is lit. And maybe that's the signal, guys. This is the first video I've done with a lit sign. So maybe that's the signal.
Nice.
I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.